Gen X, my generation, born between 1965 and 1980. We're continuing this series because I promised you I was going to bring you that even though as a generation we have a lot of connective experiences, i.e., being abandoned by our boomer parents, being latchkey kids, etc., etc., etc. But there is a stark difference between some of the suburban versus urban Gen X growing up experiences that I'm going to bring to you today because you know what? My name is Lena and welcome to my channel. And I'm having fun with this series on things on my YouTube algorithm that once you start to pull one thread, 400 other pieces of thread in different colors, different variations, and different types of storylines that all relate to the one thing you were looking at 5 months ago just by happenstance. And all of a sudden now you have an entire series to go over. So I hope you enjoy this content. I hope that if you are not subscribed yet and this is your first time here and I bring you content and value, that you just consider subscribing. And thank you all to my new subs and for my ride and dies. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. It is part 95 billion and three because I can go on and on and on about this. But I found this to be intriguing because as I was going through the Gen X Chronicles, which is extensive from very different people on TikTok, YouTube, and I don't have Instagram. So I started listening to a lot of the components that they were talking about, and I started laughing because there's a lot of stuff that growing up in the Bronx, and this can relate to any urban area, could be Chicago, could be California, wherever you are. Yeah, wherever you are. There's a difference between living an urban lifestyle and a suburban lifestyle. So I was listening to a lot of the people talking about their experiences, Gen X, and I realized that there were a lot of suburban things that happened that we never did or had the opportunity to do. Just to give you a quick example, garden hoses. Apparently, people in the suburban areas would be thrown out of their houses like everybody else was in that generation and weren't allowed to come home until the light flickered. We'll go into that, how it worked on the urban side. But to get water, apparently, you would drink from a garden hose and it would be metallic, it would be disgusting, and you have no idea where the water was coming from. Okay. I never saw a garden hose where I grew up. We didn't have gardens. We didn't have hoses. We had fire hydrants, and that alone was fun. But we had no garden hoses. There was no garden in the Bronx. Okay. Now, I didn't grow up in the South Bronx, which was way worse than most suburban, urban areas. But we'll go further into that. So I started listening to a bunch of other things that I was like, let's take a look at this TikToker who grew up in my generation, but had similar but different experiences. Let's take a look. Stay tuned.
If you grew up in Gen X, you had your parents who told you every single day that you were like 1 second away from being murdered or kidnapped. Every single day. We had to get our fingerprints and our photo taken every school year in case we got kidnapped. And if that wasn't traumatizing enough, they put all the missing kids on the side of our milk carton that we drank at lunch. We had to practice what we would do if we caught on fire because they made it seem like we were going to catch on fire all the time. Every time you got on the escalator with your mom, you were doing something wrong. You were too close to this, your shoe was too untied, don't hold on to this. They insisted that if we made one wrong move on that escalator, we were going to get sucked down into those metal teeth and like put in like ground beef. I still have anxiety about escalators. Like that first step, I'm like, all right, don't fuck this up. You're going to be ground beef. Our parents left us alone all the time, but they didn't want other people to know that they left us alone all the time. So if somebody called the home phone and you were home by yourself, you had to lie and tell them that your mom was in the shower. Because if you didn't and you told them you were home alone, the person on the other end is probably a murderer who's going to come straight to your house, kidnap you, and kill you the moment that they know you're home alone. They made us think we were going to die all the time. I'm certainly not the perfect parent, but I've raised 3 teenagers, and at no point in any of their lives have I lied to them and told them they were going to die in a situation where they weren't. We were told that every single day.
So she had an experience, obviously, Listen, out of the 18 things that she recalled, I can confirm none of them, at least where we grew up. Um, One, the phone calls. Let's get into the phone calls. I mentioned this in my other video. We had ring numbers assigned to the people that were scheduled to call us because we were latchkey kids. So every day after school, when I got home, if my mother had to call me because she worked the night shift, so she wasn't home when I got home. So she would be already gone. I had to pick up my brother, go to home, open the door. My grandmother would leave at 5 o'clock and then she would be home by 6. So we had like about a 3 hour window of being home alone. And it was a lot of that in our building. And we lived in a fairly large building. It wasn't the projects, but it was like a condominium. So we had a lot of people in the condominium and there were a lot of children and they were all going home alone. Okay. A lot of them. So she, my mom was one ring. So one ring, hang up and then call back, like I mentioned. And then my grandmother would be two rings, um, hang up and then call back. We knew it was her. And if by any chance my uncle needed to reach me or us, it would be three rings. Why? Because we were not allowed to answer the phone for probably the same reasons, though my mother never said that the person on the other line would come and probably try to kill you. I don't remember putting the fear of death, but there was a sense of something. You know, we had to be careful. Though we collectively all in the building went to the same school and some parents were around and they would make sure that we'd get into the building and stuff like that. There was always this air of be careful, watch your back. But my mother and my grandmother never said, you're going to die. Not like that. I don't remember anything about being in school and having our fingerprints and pictures taken ever, ever. That was the first time I heard that. Now, I do remember the commercials saying, make sure you have an updated picture of your child in case something happens. But the schools that I went to, we never had any I would remember being fingerprinted for the amount of years that I was in school. Now, as far as being told to go under a table, you know, because of a fire, etc., we were never taught that in my school, at least. I remember drop, duck, and roll from an after-school special that would be playing. We learned it from TV. We didn't learn it in our school. I don't know what kind of school I went to. And I went to Catholic school. So did my brother. I'm beginning to question a lot of life choices. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I wasn't as traumatized as far as being the fear of death as she was. Escalators, my mother never said a damn thing. If my foot got stuck, I need to figure out how to get it out. It's part of the abandonment issues. Do you know I went to Macy's on Herald Square? Because that's where we were most of the time. When I tell you that my mother took us downtown almost every single weekend. If it was not downtown, it was Coney Island and Brighton Beach once a month. Whew, that was a long ride. But we were in Central Park, Herald Square, Madison Square Garden area, all of that, all the time. And I was there. I was still living in Miami. I came back to visit my son, and it was, I want to say, around the holiday times. And I went to Macy's, and they still have those old crickety wood escalators that if your shoelace or shoe got caught into it, your whole body was just going to be, like she said, ground beef. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, they still exist? He goes, yeah, these are the oldest escalators. I'm like, you think? I remember them. They traumatized. Anybody been to Macy's Herald Square? Anybody remember those escalators? Drop a comment below. Let's take a look at this Gen Xer who has some interesting playground problems. Okay, stay tuned.
I am Gen X. Let's talk about the top 5 most dangerous pieces of playground equipment that existed when we were kids. I swear, we were American gladiators before there was ever such a thing as American gladiators. All right, here's number 5. Do you all remember this thing? I don't know. We called it like the crow's nest or something. But when you get to the top of that, it was like King of the Mountain. And kids were rolling down, getting their legs caught, and the holes flipping backwards, banging their head on metal. And then they finally hit the ground. I can see why that one was banned. It's dangerous. All right, so here's the next one. Y'all remember the seesaw, right? where you push off the ground as hard as you can, so hard that your butt flies off your end when you get to the top, and you fly over those handlebars and turn into a scorpion right in front of them, and then roll off and lay in the hot sand for a few minutes because you're so injured. That's dangerous. Okay, not a lot needs to be said about this guy right here, but you can see the sun baking that metal slide. And I tell you what, I don't care what time of the year it was, there's always a mud puddle at the bottom of that thing, and you can't avoid it. And you're lucky to have any skin left by the time you get to the bottom of that thing. You can cook bacon on those. All right. Everybody had a friend whose dad pushed you way too hard on one of these. They always had that bark on the ground for safety. But I tell you what, it was always so far pushed away from that thing because kids flying off and dragging it off with their bodies about 10, 15 feet away. Those things, I swear, I think they're using those. That's where they came up with the idea for the astronauts to test the G-force. All right, here is my most dangerous piece of playground equipment from Gen X. This is where tetanus was invented. There was no such thing as tetanus before one of these happened. You get slivers the size of small tree logs, and I tell you what, just rusty nails sticking out everywhere, and that's if you can even find your way out of that thing. We're lucky to be alive today, but here we are.
So we had none of that. Not in the Bronx. I do remember them because I go back to what I said. My mother took me to Central Park. And in Central Park, all of those retarded, dangerous things existed. Especially the two most traumatizing one, which was the metal slide, where you burned your ass off. Okay? I don't know how we were allowed to even get away with that. As children and adults, as people, as human beings, okay? I don't know what genius thought of that. And that big playhouse that I remember, that was a nightmare. And we played in it and we suffered, okay? That big spinning thing, I never got. First of all, I don't like anything that spins, so I would have never even gone next to it. But I remember seeing that in Central Park. But I don't think you guys really, for who don't remember or were not aware, I'm going to show you some clips about what the Bronx was like, okay, where I grew up. Now, I didn't grow up in this area, but I took the bus and I saw it. I saw it, and it was not good. So much so that the next two clips, you're going to understand that it was so bad that President Ronald Reagan had to make an appearance in the South Bronx. And if you think it was just the South Bronx, no, it's just that was the highly visible. Let's take a look.
I'm trying to tell you. I am trying to tell you that I know now there is no program or promise that a president can make that the federal government can come in and wave a wand and do this. It is 3 years and nothing has been done. Now that was almost 3 years ago, and today the president blames the local officials, the mayor of the city and others, and says they called it off.
What are you going to do?
Well, the world between the private sector and using tax incentives to give the people who will take jobs, the people who will come in here and build businesses, that will give them an incentive to come in because they'll get a tax break while they are putting those businesses and getting them established to provide jobs. So listen for a minute. What I'm trying to tell you is I can't do a damn thing for you if I don't get elected.
No, but Anthony, what are you going to do anyway? We'll make promises.
I just finished telling you and you wouldn't stop talking to listen. That if I get in the White House, I won't do the same thing Mr. Carter did and forget all about this.
Well, you got elected into office, and we got the Just Say No campaign. We got slammed with HIV/AIDS and Reaganomics and everything else. Now, this is a story for another video of what actually happened afterwards to the Bronx. But just to give you some clues, we had no playgrounds. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that everywhere in the Bronx. There are some good places in the Bronx, even back then, Throgs Neck. And I'm probably just spitting out things that people don't know about, but there were some good areas. But again, I remember mostly Central Park, Manhattan, and where we lived in the Bronx. Okay. So what did we do for fun? Well, like I said, we had black parties. We were breakdancing. We had our fire hydrants. We were allowed to stay in front of the building because most of the area were buildings. You know, they were tall buildings, whether it's 5 floors or 10 floors or 15 floors. We were in front of the building. That is how we grew up. You know, we didn't have bikes. I know this might come as shock. And again, this is from my own experience and from the people that I was living around. If you had a bike, you were a target. Please understand that. We as kids did not have bikes. Okay. Anyone on the block that had a bike, they were in a crew doing nefarious things. But if you were running around on a bike, like we see a lot of these Suburbans that claim that they were on bikes, they didn't have helmets. Yeah, we didn't do any of that. We didn't have any of that. That was not happening with us. We were having block parties. We were having breakdancing. We were playing dice. We were playing caps. We were playing hopscotch. We were playing double dutch. There were no bikes. We didn't want to be a target. Okay. And most of the parents couldn't afford it. All right. Let's be real. Because if you have more than 2 kids, each of them had to have a bike. Forget the helmets. There were no bikes. That's another thing that kind of made me laugh when I was realizing how different, even though we were all abandoned, we were all latchkey kids, there was a lot more freedom up in the burbs than it was in the urban areas because, dude, no, we were not doing any of that. Okay. And that's why I wanted to bring this to you because I'm wondering, does anybody else have these stories from where they were growing up? The differences between people who had homes in suburbia and, you know, the people that were living in more urban collected areas? Because I can't be the only one that noticed this. I cannot believe it. You know, that's why I wanted to bring this to you because I thought it was freaking hilarious. Okay. So, let's take a look at this next clips and, let's discuss because I thought these were interesting too. Stay tuned.
If you grew up poor in the 80s, these scenes are gonna hit you right in the nostalgia. Hot dogs? We didn't have fancy buns. We used Wonder Bread so Mom didn't have to buy 2 kinds of bread.
Christmas gifts? Totally through Kmart or Sears layaway. Mom would only put down a few bucks at a time, just hoping to pay it all off before the deadline. Cable TV? Nope. We had antenna TV with maybe 10 channels, and most of the time we just ended up watching reruns.
And the kitchen dishes? Forget matching sets. Garfield mugs, Star Wars glasses, Pizza Hut cups. We used them for years.
Meals were simple. Whatever was on your plate, that's what you ate. No substitutions. And yeah, we were constantly reminded not to waste a single bite.
Clothes? Cheap brands were the go-to. Levi's? Guess? That was luxury.
Oh, totally.
Most of our stuff came from Kmart or JCPenney.
Life was tight, sure, but all those little everyday moments. Looking back, they're pure sweet memories.
So, would you go back to the 80s and live it again? Oh, and by the way, what's your phone battery at while watching this?
Whew. If that didn't bring a tear to your eye, I don't know what will. Because I cannot disagree with any part of that video. The first one was like a throwback because I laugh today when I see hot dog buns. I do. Because I remember us using the Wonder Bread as hot dog buns. I thought that that was the only type of bread for a while. I smartened up after going to the grocery store myself, do the shopping for my mom. But yeah, we had one bread in the house and that was it. You put a hot dog on that, you put peanut butter and jelly on that, you put a ham and cheese sandwich, which by the way, I hate ham and I just hate ham on a sandwich. Okay. Roast beef, maybe. But yeah, the mugs. I could tell you that whenever we were to get mugs, like at the movie theater, like the specialty mugs, I think at the time, definitely the McDonald's and the Burger King, which we didn't really frequent very often, Burger King, but definitely McDonald's. Those were our cups. That was, we had like what Stanley cups are to the generation now. Those specialty cups were flowing everywhere inside of our cabinets, everywhere. Now, what I can disagree on a little bit would be the clothing. Now, they were showing malls, and as I said, we didn't go to malls, right? We were in the city. We didn't have real malls in the Bronx yet, but we had Fordham Road in the Bronx. I'm going to put a clip here, and it was Alexander's. Let's take a look. Alexander's from the top of Fordham Road all the way down to the bottom of Fordham Road, which would lead to Fordham University. There were shopping stores galore. They had VIM sneakers, which I used to love. They were all, the movie theaters were there. Fordham Road for us was, I guess you can consider a mall. And then there's Alexander's. Like if you wanted something fancy, you would get it at Alexander's. Or if you really wanted to get a little bit more bougie, there was also Sears. But for the most part, we were shopping up and down Fordham Road, with all the little, specialty shops. And there were a lot of them, a lot. And if you were not at Fordham Road, you were at 149th Street and 3rd Avenue. That's the South Bronx right there. We would go there not often, but that's how I know that the South Bronx view was true. But there's a special section on 149th and 3rd Avenue, which still exists, that actually had an Alexander's too, but they had all those little specialty shops. We didn't go there often, but I do recall it going there. So yeah, I mean, that's how we shop. We didn't JCPenney, who? There wasn't even a Kmart. Okay. We were lucky that we even got, I don't even remember getting a Toys R Us. When we wanted to go to Toys R Us, we had to go into the city. Okay. And the real fancy stuff, my mother would get in Macy's, which would, I want to say Macy's was around Parkchester area in the Bronx, but it was past the 80s, not when I was younger. Maybe I have to look into that. But the one that we would go to is Herald Square. So, again, I resonated, and that's what I'm saying, the connective tissue, because even if you weren't in the urban areas, you could remember some of those things, even if you were a little more bougie than us. Drop a comment below if any part of that, even if you were in a suburban area, resonated with you. Because just because you live in a suburban area doesn't mean that you were rich. He said it real clear. If you were poor, and it could be anywhere across the country. So that one got me a lot. Let's take a look at the next clip and see what you resonate with. Because, I got to stop crying. Okay. Stay tuned. And hey, if you're enjoying this, if this is bringing you the warm and fuzzies, if you like my content, if you like me, and you want to see more of me, consider subscribing. Stay tuned.
Holy moly! If I have to hear one more person commenting, "What about the clackers?" my head will explode. So here's to your clackers. It's 1971. The world is obsessed with two things, bell-bottoms and clackers. Originally inspired by Argentine bolas weapons, these weren't your average toys. They were heavy acrylic spheres designed to smash together at high speeds. But there was a problem. The early versions, made of tempered glass or hard plastic, had a nasty habit of, well, exploding, shattering into shrapnel and sending kids to the ER. By 1971, the FDA officially labeled them a mechanical hazard. The original clacker was dead, or so we thought. Enter the 80s. Everything was louder, brighter, and apparently more combustible. Toy makers realized that kids didn't just want noise, they wanted fire. This is when the hand blasters arrived. They ditched the strings for a handheld design. These weren't just plastic. They were ceramic sparking rocks, coated in a friction-sensitive chemical, the same stuff used in toy caps. You didn't just clack them, you blasted them. They smelled like gunpowder, looked like magic, and turned every playground into a miniature fireworks display. By the 90s, the blaster ball reached its final form. Sold in blister packs at every gas station and corner store, they came in neon green, hot pink, and radical orange. They were the ultimate banned-at-school toy. Teachers hated the smell of sulfur in the hallways, and parents hated the black scuff marks on the kitchen floor. They were cheap, they were loud, and for a few years you weren't cool unless your thumbs were slightly charred from a marathon sparking session.
I think our parents and our grandparents try to kill us. Those monstrosities of clackers. Everyone that I know, including myself, owned one. We thought we were the hottest shit in town. Now, a majority of us in the urban area were using it as weapons because we needed to defend ourselves. But there were times that we would sit in the front and we would clackety, 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 clackety until either we clacked one of our eyeballs, one of our friends' eyeballs, we hurt our ankle, a body part because it would smash, it would crash, it would burn, it would do everything. And then we would go out and get more because our parents allowed us to. Who hated us the most? Which generation was it? Because I don't even understand this. And I remember distinctively having at least 10 of them. Always breaking something. Oh, I don't know how I still have my two eyes. Or my brother. Or anybody in the block. We lived dangerously close to the edge. And our parents and grandparents and great-great-grandparents didn't give a fly. I don't remember the 50s kids having that. Why you do that to us, people? Thank God. And it just went further into the 90s. I'm like, I don't remember. I remember in the 80s. Okay? I don't remember in the 90s. I don't know how we got away with this shit. Okay? Let's go there. We didn't also have transportation in the conventional sense. Like I said, if you were trying to get somewhere, you either had to walk, okay? And let me tell you what some of our footwear was like. Do you remember the jelly shoes? They were in all colors being sold everywhere. I cannot be the only one that remembers this monstrosity, okay? They were horrendous. They smelled, and the amount of walking that we needed to do, those shoes, those boots were not made for walking at all, ever. They were torture devices for children, okay? All of them. Every color. I don't care, okay? Sneakers, I don't know. I don't remember any padding in our sneakers. And we walked. We walked for a while around the block. We were walking. And for those who didn't walk, do you know what our idiot generation did? Which they still do now, and I don't know why people do this. Bus surfing. And I know there's subway surfing, but I never saw anybody do subway surfing. I saw this on my block. If you needed to go more than 10 blocks and you were allowed to, this is what you would do. And you would just hop right off the next stop whenever you felt like it. Do you understand how insane this was? This is what our life was like, okay? And I would be watching this. My brother never did that. I would kill him. I would kill him. Okay? Thank God. But we had some rowdy kids in our block. Okay? They didn't care. And then let's break down the history of one of the most frightening scenes that I remember being on the subway about. So bear with this little trip down memory Bronx Lane or New York City. And then we'll come back and discuss what the hell was this? And it still exists, I believe. But do you understand? I'm going to show you. Stick to.
Take a journey to the 1980s in the Bronx, a time marked by corruption, poverty, and the birth of hip-hop as we know it. The Bronx in the 80s was notorious for its extreme danger and urban decay. The borough faced an epidemic of fear, fires, and homelessness. Abandoned buildings and empty lots became the backdrop for a community struggling to survive amidst the chaos. The mafia had a significant presence in the Bronx. Families like the Genovese and Gambino controlled various underground activities. These families wielded immense power and influence, shaping the borough's underground economy. In response to the danger, a group of citizens known as the Guardian Angels emerged. Founded in 1979 by Curtis Sleeman, these volunteers wore distinctive red berets and patrolled the streets and subways, providing a sense of security and hope. They were a symbol of the community's resilience, standing up against the unrest and disorder. The 1980s.
1979, the Guardian Angels. I was 10 years old when I was taking the train, again with my mom, and I saw these men coming into the subways, into the train cars. I had no context. I just know that I was either going to be really, really scared or really, really protected. When they turned around, they had their Guardian Angel jackets on. I was like, all right, that's a positive thing. And then, as the months started to go by and we started to listen to the news more often and understand what this was, it had gotten to a point that there were people that had to gather together to join this group to protect people in the streets, in the subways. Do you know how traumatizing that is for a 10-year-old to see this? Because we didn't have enough protection. They were overrun, and this went on for years. Like, Guardian Angels were always in the subways, at least the ones that I would take, which was normally the 4, 5, 6. Sometimes I would take the 2 train. So 1979, I'm going to say until about 1989, I would see them heavily. I don't remember seeing them after, to their credit, only because I stopped taking the public transportation right after my son was born. So definitely I do remember that 10-year span between being 10 years old and 20 years old. And there was a lot of controversy, but, after a while, I kind of felt safer, and it's crazy to me that it had gotten to that point. And I think about it today, and when I saw that clip, I was like, oh my God, the Guardian Angels. Does anybody remember these guys? Do you have any memories of them, of serve and protect, I guess? Anybody from other states? Do you ever have anything similar like that? I would love to know. But out of the ashes, I want to show you the next few clips that brought a joy to my heart and made me remember that they were good times. And I'm going to preface this by saying this. I know that some of the suburban areas had the ability to have people give them sandwiches and food and stuff like that. I remember hearing that in some clips. To be clear, in our urban area, we didn't take food from anybody. Okay? Not just anybody. We had a lot of people cooking in the buildings, but we weren't being offered sandwiches or cooking, and we weren't allowed to take anybody else's food. Okay? That was just a rule in my house. I don't know about anybody else's house. Okay? You either cooked, which I did for my brother, and wait till your grandmother gets home or your mother gets home, and you would cook. But we were not taking food from other people. But these next few clips, we were allowed to do in droves. First up, the piragua. And for anyone who doesn't know what a piragua is, it is shaved ice with a big block of ice shaved down into a cone, and then you would put some sugary sweet syrup on there. And that predominantly was done by a truck. It was not really done too much at home. We didn't have the machine, or if when you take a look at this clip, you're going to understand why. But when that piragua man came up and down our block, that was the shit. Let's take a look. If you never experienced a piragua like that, it was always an old man. I can't explain it. He probably the same old man. That would be crazy, right? He would always come up and down with that big block of shaved ice, and he was more popular than the Mr. Softy truck, which rarely came down up and down our block. He did, but not as much as the piragua man. We loved that. The next one. Let's get into this one, because in competition with the piragua man, because if he wasn't around, El coquito, the little shaved, I want to say ice that had coconut flavors. They did have other flavors. They were ices. They beat any ices that you can get anywhere else. This was the shit. Let's take a look. They came in all different flavors. I always got the coconut because I'm a coconut fanatic. You could not beat that icy for nothing. Now, I've had Italian ices. I like Italian ices, but I am jonesing for one of those coquito ices. You don't understand. Every once in a while, I'll get a rainbow one, but oh my God. If you didn't have piragua, you would wait for the Mr. Icy Coco. And then the last one. This was the only time we were allowed to take food from somebody that didn't have a truck. And it was called limbe. Okay? Let's take a look how the limbe used to be served. Stay tuned.
Limbe out the window. We got another window vendor. That's Yesenia, and she's the limbe plug. Got coco, crema, palcha, marindo, mango, Oreo de to. So I got 3 cocos, and it comes with a tamper seal and this cute little sticker. So you know how to get palcha, maracuya, chinola.
The limbe was the only item we were allowed to take from somebody's home. And we knew who in the neighborhood would drop down those ices to the children. Your mother or your grandmother knew this person. Actually, my grandmother used to make them, and I learned how to make them. I haven't made them since before my son was born. Okay, probably when I left my home at 18. But as a kid, I used to make them with my grandmother. We never sold them, but we would make them. And when I saw this, it brought back a flood of memories. I am hankering for all 3 of them now. If there's nothing else that I want to do is get at least one, or at least do the limbe. But if you've had one of those, you knew that the only way, because there was no trucks, there was nobody walking around with it, you had to get them from somebody that would drop it down from a window. Homemade, baby. That is how we lived in the urban area. Tell me, what did you experience? Did you ever have something similar to this? Was it quirky like that? Because I know a lot of people are going to be like, what? Like, yep, that is how we were. We had the buildings, they would drop it down. We had apartments. We knew who was getting what, and when it was limbe time, that was it. You get your limbe, you get paid, and that's it. You put the money in the bag and it goes back up. We were entrepreneurs way before we even understood what that was. Okay. If I would have known then what I know now, I would have had a whole limbe machinery. Okay. Because we were on that. So I'm sure that there's going to be comments about certain people living a certain way. I would love to hear all of it. I read all of your comments. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get to all the comments, but I generally try to get to all of them. I hope you guys like my shirt. I got it off of Amazon. It's in celebration of the 4th of July, the 250th anniversary of our great America. I'm going to leave the tagged item below if you want to pick it up. I love this shirt. I love it. It's cap sleeve. It's not too short. I love the color. It really, for me, I don't like to wear white because I do a lot of cooking. I do a lot of cleaning, but I specifically got this because we're having a party and I want to make sure that I have something that's bright because it's hot as hell out there now. So if you like this, I will leave you the link to it. And if you want to get it from my tagged products, I earn a little bit of a commission on that, so I would appreciate that. If not, you can go to Amazon directly and find it yourself. There's variations. I have 2 more shirts like this that I'm going to bring out in my videos because I am proud to be 250 years old. Yes, I am. Despite the madness, despite the poverty, despite how we needed to grow up back in the Gen X days, it made us who we are. I wouldn't change anything. Okay, maybe a few things. Okay, maybe a few other things in my head that I think about. The clackers. Oof, no, I would change that immediately. But it made us tough. It made us what Gen X was about. There's a lot more psychology behind this that I'm going to bring to you, but I just wanted to bring this up and just show you a couple of quirky things to give you a little bit of background and let me know if you experience the same difference between urban and suburban. Because at the end of the day, we are all connected by one major experience. We were born between 1965 and 1980, and the struggle was real. No matter what side of the world you were on, it was. So I hope you enjoy this video. I hope that it brought some nostalgia. I hope it brought you some interesting memories and some questionable ones. And those slides, okay? So thank you, everyone, for watching my videos. I hope that you like, comment, share, hype. Send this from here to around the world that I reach because I want to give you a blessed day, week, month, year, because I reach all of you from Gen X to boomers to millennials to the next generation. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.